Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 premiere of The Lincoln Lawyer. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I love that we don't even get the cold opening that we got this episode at the beginning. We didn't even get that scene this episode. Who knows how far into the season we're going to be getting that. I love it. I think it'd be really interesting if it turns out that's super at the end of the season, so we have no context for what that was. But I love the whole, like, right, I know you're looking at this like, oh, another parking garage again, and like, yes, getting the ever-living piss beat out of him. Hey, he was holding his own to some extent against two people. That's pretty impressive, but still that final blow and freeze frame on it and everything. So rewind. It's in the aftermath of season 1's finale. I don't think they expressly told you like how long it's been, but because of last season's case, he's gained a lot of notoriety. The Lincoln Lawyer. So interesting because his career was on the downswing and now it's back to the upswing, and which is so ironic and interesting considering like him and Maggie's careers are like opposites of each other yet again. But he's, like I said, he's on the upswing, she's on the downswing, and that causes some complications and issues in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, he's a lot more famous, and I love that conversation with Izzy where she was like, right, kind of don't let the fame get to your head. She kind of says that, fame is like crack, and it's like, well, she's like, not like I've ever done crack or anything like that. Because they were having this conversation where she's like, oh my god, my ex is doing better, so she's not going on tour and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, just be careful you don't get, like, people don't change immediately. People don't change unless they want to. So don't kind of assume like it's only been 6 months that she's changed. It's like, yeah, you need more time for her to prove it. It's easy to be like, oh, I've changed, I've taken the right steps, but to keep going is a whole other story. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. But because of Mickey's fame, it's led to more people, more clients wanting to. I love that the whole thing too of like, yeah, you got your client off, but then he gets shot, and killed. And it's like, yeah, that is the irony. And I even love that he's talking to Griggs later on. He's like, yeah, everyone keeps bringing that up. It's always that asterisk of like, yeah, you got him off. Granted, you can't be held liable for him getting like killed in public. That's kind of outside of your control. You got him off, so that's all that kind of matters. So. Which, I mean, obviously, it's like the complicated thing of like, well, he was guilty of sin. So, either way, trying to balance this new fame and trying not to let it go to his head. It seems like he's got a good enough head on his shoulders, but we know he has addiction issues, so that's why Izzy kind of brought that up too, of like, you exchange one addiction with another, and fame could be that new high you keep trying to chase, in a sense. So it's like, yeah, you got to be careful with that. But so far, once again, first episode, it could all go downhill from here, but the first episode does not seem like he's let it go to his head, but he is enjoying it to some extent. I mean, there are perks. I mean, him and Maggie went to that restaurant and he got some extra serving stuff like that. And I love that he's like, oh, he's eating it reluctantly after Maggie left. And then he got to push stuff aside, starts eating it more like, yo, this is actually bomb. And that's where I wasn't because I knew Lana Parrilla was in this season. I knew, like, obviously I'm getting to super, super late, but I remembered she was in this season. I just didn't remember what the context of who her character was because I avoided a lot of trailers. I just knew and saw that she was in it. I think I best know her from is Once Upon a Time. Interesting timing because I caught up with something else, Tracker, where Jennifer Morrison was in it, and just funny timing and stuff like that. That's all it is. But I wasn't expecting her character to be a chef. I guess in my head I assumed she was another lawyer. Like, that's what I thought that was. So her being a chef, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. And them immediately hitting it off, and it's just like, Jesus, dude. That woman's like, especially she's like, yo, when I know what I want and I go after it fiercely, I'm like, God, like you were too sexy to be that like it's just like, that's the deadly combination of being as sexy and beautiful as she is and being as forward as she is. Like, dude, that is, it's like, Mickey, you had no chance. There was no chance in hell because like that's the deadly combination there. So laid it down apparently. So, man, they're really hitting it off. It's so interesting too, considering like, right, Maggie has a new guy in her life that she's dating, and it's like, oh, Tim. And it's like, no, it's Jim, and you know that. And he's like, right, I didn't think it was serious. Which he doesn't tell Maggie. He's like, oh, I'm happy for you. I hope everything works out. I hope he's good to you. But doesn't ever talk about the fact is, because I think it's also like it's obviously he has such a weird relationship with his exes. He has a very interesting relationship with his exes. Specifically, like Lorna, it's a good interesting. The Maggie situation is a complicated one at that, so I guess you don't want to admit that because you're not even expressly dating, you're hooked up, but you like each other, and there's a little flirtation back and forth, so it's not solidified enough on like defining it as a relationship. So but that's going to be interesting to see where that story goes. I can assume that's going to be one of like I guess that might be like the seasonal B plot is the Lisa situation. I don't know if her case that she's kind of bringing to Mickey will be the overall, because it's about a gentrification of the neighborhood, and there's like one particular businessman behind, his name's Mitchell, and he ends up filing a restraining order against her. Luckily Mickey's like, oh, I can deal with that, which I love. Lorna, she's like, oh, I know, like, oh, who's that woman, and why'd you sleep with her? He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, dude, you're putting your hands in your pockets, scratching your heads, like all the telltale signs. I was married to you, I know what's going on. And she starts listing off all these like innuendos about them hooking up, and her just kind of gyrating, and it's just like, man, that's once again weird but interesting, not even weird, just interesting relationship to have with your ex, where your ex is talking about like, yeah, here's someone you're bringing in as a client pro bono because you laid it down, or she laid it down on you. It's like that's but we kind of already knew what the relationship was. So like I said, I believe that's probably going to be like the B plot, and I'm curious to see what that goes. If there ends up being a little, I hope that, once again, knowing nothing about this season, I hope it don't end up being a thing of, because it's just, you get that inkling like that's not going to work out, and I'm just curious why. Are we going to find out that was a setup? It's like, that would be I was about to say, we saw another setup this episode, which we'll get to later, but it's like, that makes me feel like there's nothing you can fully trust this season, that you don't know if there's ulterior motives behind it. So you want to give, I was about to call her by her real name, Lana, instead of Lisa. But you want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I'm just like, it just feels like there's going to be a setup twist for it. You're just waiting. It could just be a thing of, it just doesn't work out. She's a busy chef trying to put all into a restaurant, and a lot of stuff falls her to the side because of that. And same thing for Mickey and his work. So you also have the Cisco storyline where he's supposed to be looking into stuff, and you knew immediately when Lorna was asking about a file, and he was like, what file? She's like, the one you were looking for, Mickey. He said, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it. You're like, okay, why are you lying to her then? It's like, that's not good. You're supposed to be getting married and everything. It's like, oh, that's not. And then it's like, because it's not only Lorna he's lying to, it's Mickey as well. And we find out later on when he like shows up at a prison, and it's like, oh yeah, come on, like you're getting out, let's go for a ride. It's about his past rearing its head again, because once again, I don't remember everything last season, so do correct me, give me, because I did not take the time to rewatch season 1 before this. So I was meaning to do that back when season 2 originally came out, but yeah. But I do remember like the biker gang thing coming up last season, so I guess some of that rearing its ugly head last season, and it's kind of like favors O type of thing. So he kind of has to chill around, and once again, I think it's the thing of secrets, because Lorna's got her own, because apparently, and maybe we're supposed to know who that person is, but it's like, oh, like the person that running like this mentor thing for Lorna as she's trying to, study for stuff. And she's like, oh, I'm going to get Mickey to do it. And she found out the person in charge of it, and the name struck a chord with her, which I'm like, do we as the audience know who that? Once again, it might have been a name from season 1, or maybe it's something from this season that we don't know about, we're not supposed to know about, but we'll eventually find out. So everyone's keeping secrets. Mickey's one secret is kind of out this episode, that being the Lisa thing, but Lorna and Cisco keeping stuff to themselves, and the complicated nature of all of that. The main through line this season is the continuation of the Jesus case, because Mickey was already ready to like be prepared in case like there was any more heat towards Jesus about the murder and everything. And it does come towards him in the form of Griggs. So Griggs like, yeah, bring him down so I can question him and stuff like that, because it's like, because even Cisco brought it up, it's like, wouldn't it be double jeopardy? But it's like, no, like, because of like how it was done, it's like the case never technically happened, so they can recharge him for the same thing. It's like it's a double jeopardy. It's a technically not a double jeopardy, even though it kind of is. It's kind of a interesting loophole technically, because it's like, right, because the trial was kind of like expunged and all that was kind of expunged, like it never happened from his record, they can like try him again without it being double or charge him and try him again without it being double jeopardy. So Jesus was supposed to roll up, tell the truth and everything, which that's the problem. Even Mickey says later on he made the biggest mistake, and it's like, well, his biggest mistake, he was like, yeah, I trusted a cop, and even Haley was like, ooh, he's almost like, yeah, I know. But because Griggs is like, you know, he's tough but fair, but he's also a cop that's like, yo, I'm gonna do what I need to. I'm gonna lay down some traps to kind of falter you. Like, this ain't gonna be some friendly thing, because he tried to make it seem like it was, but Griggs is like, yo, like, despite everything, because it's like, yeah, this whole Jesus situation was a slap in the face, and they need someone to be a fall guy, and either they legitimately strongly believe that the bad guy got away with it, in this case Jesus, and they're just that determined about doing it, or it's just like, no, we need someone to fall for. There's no one else right now except for this mysterious tattooed guy, Gloria Days, and we can't track her down to get her testimony about this, so we need to like get what's in front of us, because we strongly believe like he is the person who did it, or at the very least he's the best plausible person, so we can wrap this up again and kind of, you know, save some face after everything last season. So, but the problem is, like, I knew something was up the way Griggs questioned him about the knife. He's like, do you own that? He was like, no. And then specifically afterwards asked, did you ever own one? And he was like, no. I was like, you did, didn't you? And you just lied to him. Because I thought Mickey knew, because Mickey kind of looked at him, because he was looking up. He probably thought it was interesting that Griggs would ask those back-to-back questions. It's such a very specific question of, do you own one? And then immediately asking, did, meaning like you already knew he had possession of one. Turns out his roommate ratted him out, said, well, not even ratted him out, but said that he owned this very specific knife and that he threw it away. In fact, he saw him throw it in the water. And Mickey confronts Jesus about it later on. He's like, why didn't you tell me? He was like, I was trying to, like, I knew that it would look a certain way if I admitted the truth. Yeah, but it's like, you lying about it makes it worse. I get it. You spend all that time in prison. Like, the last thing you want to do is give more ammunition for them. But it's like, you lying just, it does more harm than good. So you should have been upfront, and you're like, you know, does it mean any, like, would it really help that much if you were like, yeah, I had one, but I threw it away because I thought the cops, at least if you were upfront about it, it'd be like, all right. But it's like, you lying about it feels like, oh, you had something to hide. We already knew you had something to hide because you threw away the knife, but you lying about it just makes it even more certain. And Griggs was just like smiling after they left. So, and Jesus is kind of frustrated with Mickey, because he's like, I need you to believe me. So he's like, go ahead and abandon me again. He's like, no, I'm going to be by your side. Just go home. Don't talk to anybody. So, and it was actually advice he got from Haley about, like, right, don't worry so much about what the future holds. Just handle everything right in front of you, one thing at a time, you know? Because it was like her talking about, she was like, he had something happen in the 4th grade and she was stressing out. He was like, yeah, I remember a 9-year-old telling me she wanted to, she wanted to go to Yale. But he gave her the advice to just take things one step at a time. Don't try, just do what's in front of you. Stop worrying about the future and take things as they come to you one at a time. Because if you're so busy thinking about where things could go and all that, you get so lost in the sauce that you only see the forest for the trees. I always butcher that phrasing because I know I'm saying it wrong, but hopefully you know what metaphor I'm trying to say. The most unexpected thing to me was the Russell Lawson thing. I figured and had a inkling there was going to be more to that, but I thought like maybe it's going to be like a recurring thing throughout the season that maybe like Mickey comes back to him. I was not expecting that ending twist. I was like, that's interesting. But either way, we're introduced to Russell. It was like hey, he got drunk, ended up in the wrong place, and he kind of is like this felony burglary thing because he broke in and like stripped naked and passed out. It's kind of an indecent exposure thing tacked on. So Mickey's way of dealing with this, I love this. Like, right, put your poker face on. I'll try and get your inhaler back. But like, I love how he flaunts the newspaper with his profile in the LA Times, and even like, which I guess almost disarmed the prosecutor in that case, because she's like, oh, look at you, like you're such a high and mighty douchebag, essentially coming in with that. But I love that the judge is kind of older, and it's like, yeah, he doesn't like digital stuff, he likes more physical stuff. And so it's like, here's some pictures of the place that my client broke into. Looks exactly like his. Had a talk screen done for him, because it's like, right, he was drunk and ended up in the wrong place. But it's like, yeah, apparently credit card wise he only bought 3 drinks, but then countered by, oh, he was roofied, because apparently that bar in particular, there have been, accounts of like people being roofied there, and there's actually been kind of a bit of an epidemic, obviously. And he kind of used that in the lawyer's face of like, you might want to kind of like give him a misdemeanor and all that, and he pays the charges for the broken window and stuff like that. Or, we could take this publicly, and I could talk about the fact is, rather than going after this mysterious person who's going around roofing people, you're up here arresting an innocent person, and that's going to be a big black eye for, the prosecution office and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's not good. And because of that, was able to get Russell off. But then, like, they had that scene before the ending where Izzy was like, yeah, he got a retainer for you too. And it was like he paid for a retainer, keeping you on retainer. I was like, oh, that's interesting, that's weird. And then I was like, the moment Mickey's at his house, I'm like, something's about to pop off, I'm not sure what. And there he is sitting there. I was like, wait, what is this all about? Turns out it was all a ploy, because he's actually the guy that killed, was it Martha? I was like, wow, that is sick. That is disgusting. I think that is a beautiful premiere twist on like, okay, cool, because now I have you on retainer, you are my lawyer, so now I can admit to my crime without you being able to do anything about it. And it's like, oh, isn't that beautiful? You're representing the guy who didn't do it, but you actually now know for sure who did do it, but you now can't. I'm like, there's got to be some loophole around that, which I'm like, that's fucked. How do you like, you have to be able to legally get around that. That's such an interesting conundrum, because it's like, shouldn't that be conflict? Like, you would almost think that be a conflict of interest, considering like, but I guess it technically isn't. I don't know. I don't know how do you like. I'm sure that's going to be the whole point of the season, of him trying to worm his way around that. But it's like, how do you do that? Because he's like, no, if you like end up trying to use this against me, or try to wiggle your way around it, being like, oh, I'm here threatening your family. He's like, no, I would never threaten you and say that I know where you and your family lived, your wife and daughter. I would never do something like that, because that in itself could give you the wiggle room, because it's the whole thing of like, I think a therapist and a priest, their testimony they can testify against you, or like reveal what they've heard in confession or in a session, if they believe you are going to hurt somebody, then they can. Otherwise, patient-doctor confidentiality, as well as the confidentiality of the church. So, yeah, it's like that. Once again, I've never thought of something like that, and it feels like, I mean, I'm sure some crime dramas had to have done that, but this is the first time I've ever come across that. Maybe, maybe there's some Law and Orders that have dealt with that, but I don't think so. Because I haven't watched a lot of law shows. So like, this is like it's a crime drama, but yes, at its heart, like a law show. So it was like, I haven't watched a lot of law shows, so maybe this has come up before, but that's such a sticky and complicated, messy situation. And as I also sucks is, hey, he's on retainer, so you can't, like, he's going to pop up from time to time just to taunt you. So, because for him, he's like, right, I had to get you off my back, and I figured this was the perfect way. And because part of me is almost wondering, like, could he be full of shit and he's not actually, I'm wondering that persona he created, was that all bullshit? Because that must mean he has some very powerful people and connections to be able to make that happen. I guess maybe they never took a deep dive into Russell. Well, I mean, there's enough how long have you been planning this so that you already had like a fake identity and everything ready? And he even said like, oh, I roofied myself just to sell the story. It's just like, jeez. He's like, oh, shouldn't I get like A for effort for all this? I mean, for the planning and effort. It's like, it's diabolical and evil as shit, but it's still like, that's insane. Like I said, I don't know if he just is that good and he has that like fake IDs on a retainer like that, like he just has that ready, or someone set that up for him just for this. Because was he hired? Like, cause he makes it sound like, right, the Martha thing is like, oh, I did that. Is it Martha or was it Marta? I think it's Martha, right? He just like, yeah, she had to go. She was causing a problem, so it's like, he was a hired gun, wasn't he? I don't think he did that on his own. This is quite the interesting conundrum and nice overarching story for this season, is unraveling that complicated pickle. Because it's like, yeah, you're representing the actual killer while trying to get the innocent guy off who looks extra guilty now, especially to Griggs. So it's like, how do you do that without losing your job and losing everything? Especially at the height of your popularity, you've been basically this guy Russell, if that's even his real name, which most likely isn't, has you by the balls. He has you super by the balls. So it's crazy developments. I'm excited to see where the rest of the season takes us, but in particular where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.